All right. All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Nairametrics' first industry economic outlook for the year. Promises to be exciting. A lot has happened. A lot is still happening. So we look forward to getting into today's industry economic outlook. Of course, we are zeroing in on the FMCGs. Fast-moving consumer goods, the sector, the challenges, and the opportunities there. Like I said, so much is happening. Yesterday's price is not today's price is a saying that is true now more than ever in Nigeria. So many economic variables are shifting and changing. And of course, there are responses to that, right? Supply end of things are responding, demand end of things are responding, industries are adapting. So that's what we hope to get into today. I am Joanna Mustafa. I'll be moderating the spaces, and we have some, panelists, experts in their field, although some of them may want to play humble, who will be giving us insight into today's discussion. I'll run through their profiles so they know their stuff, and of course, I look forward to hearing from them. Yes, so remember, if at any point you have a question to ask, you can always drop it in the chat box. And we'll be sure to run through it when it's time. So let's get into it, right? We have with us here one of the panelists, Toby Adeniyi, who is a customer supply chain director for Unilever West Africa. He's an accomplished professional with over 15 years of experience in the fast-moving consumer goods industry. He's currently serving as the customer supply chain director for West Africa at Unilever. He has worked in various capacities across sales and supply chain functions, including logistics, strategic planning, procurement, project management. He is also deeply involved in promoting Nigerian non-oil exports as the vice chairman of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria Export Promotions Group. He has worked across Africa and Asia, so well-traveled, different markets. He possesses a broad understanding of cultural influences in the workplace. His passion lies in elevating Africa and African talent in global supply chain strategy and processes, leveraging AI, which is very crucial at a time like this, and data analytics tools to enhance performance, from which he has been recognized within Unilever's global planning community, I beg your pardon. He holds a degree in computer engineering from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Ghana, and is currently pursuing an executive MBA at the Warwick University. He actively contributes to the development of supply chain community in Nigeria and mentors aspiring professionals while also engaging in advisory roles for startup initiatives. Ladies and gentlemen, Toby Adeniyi, I can't hear you clap, but I'm sure in your minds you are. Thank you for being here with us. Look forward to hearing more from you and getting insights. Let's move on. We also have with us here Ogaga Ologe. He's a financial director, Cadbury Nigeria PLC. Ogaga is an executive director of finance of Cadbury Nigeria PLC since 2019. He joined Cadbury Nigeria PLC in 2012 as a senior manager, financial reporting for Cadbury West Africa. He was integrated supply chain finance controller, West Africa, from 2014 to 2017. He was appointed as the finance controller in 2017, a position he held until his appointment to the board of Cadbury Nigeria as finance director. Mr. Ologa is also a director on the board of Cadbury Ghana Limited. Prior to joining Cadbury, Mr. Ologa worked as manager in KPMG Professional Services, a global international accounting and business advisory professional service organization. He's a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria and also a member of the Chartered Institute of Directors of Nigeria. It's a pleasure to have you in, Ogaga. Are you there? All right, I'm sure we'll hear from you pretty soon.
Thank you very much.
All right. Great. We also have with us our very own Head of Strategy and Public Affairs, Nairametrics, Yoade Aime, a distinguished chartered accountant and author of CRAPI FAT, Perspective for an Emerging Market. He boasts a diverse career spanning over 3 decades. His expertise encompasses power, oil, and gas, banking, and finance. As the head of strategy and public affairs of the Nairametrics editorial board, he has contributed significantly to internal audit, consulting, and digital media. Notably, at Sahara Group, he played a key role in establishing crucial functions like internal audits, corporate governance, risk management, and compliance. He's recognized for pioneering sustainability reporting and has authored reports from Sahara Group, Ikeja Electrics, and Irving Power PLC. Beyond corporate contribution, he actively engages in philanthropy, advising fintech startups through finance service innovators. As a founder of Accounting Lab Limited, Yuade continues to impact the business landscape with a commitment to excellence and innovation. Yuade Aime, it's great to have you in.
Good morning, Joanna. Great to be here.
Yeah, good morning. I'm going to hand over to you right now for the introduction, right?
Yes, thank you, Joanna.
Over to you, Yuade.
Thank you, Joanna. I would just be speaking about the FMCG market. Just to give some context to it in a brief presentation, which I am sharing with you now. We're looking at the sector challenges and opportunities for FMCG, and our panelists, Ogaga and Toby, are going to do a lot in helping us look at the things that we're talking about, where I'm going to speak about now, and how we see FMCG in 2024 as we go on. The table of content we have an introduction, a look at 2023, some of the exits in the FMCG space in 2023. Are there more exits possible in 2024, and what next for the FMCG sector? So a sector overview, a lot of the FMCGs faced challenges amidst economic downturn in the first 9 months of 2023. Like we know, as at December 2023, some of the FMCGs have released their unaudited reports, but those are not figures that we're going to be able to quote and talk about it now. Some of the things that brought about it was the unification of the exchange rate into a single window on June 14. We saw a significant surge from an official rate of 462 in 2022 to 765 as at June 2023, which was the end of June. Another 20% increase in the rate from June to September, and a further climb to 899.39 by December 29 at the end of the year. It led to many of the FMCGs showing losses due to exchange rate issues and high finance costs. When we looked at the analysis of the FMCG market, about 7 leading FMCG companies collectively reported foreign exchange losses of about 398 billion, resulting in a cumulative pre-tax loss of about 229.906 billion just for 9 months of 2023. We know the increase in operational costs resulting from fuel subsidy removal, and the rising inflation, which closed at 28.92 in December 2023 and 29.9 as at the end of January 2024. And these are all issues that the FMCGs are facing, aside from the fact that customers are continually not being able to have enough monies to spend in their pocket. Major challenges, like we said, exchange rates. As at February 16, on the NAFEM market, it closed at 1,537.96 to $1. We know energy prices have gone up for FMCGs who have to combine both power from diesel, fuel hikes for fuel price spikes as a result of subsidy removal for moving goods from one point to the other. Inflation, which we've also spoken about, consumer discretionary spending, less disposable income for consumers, rebranding, repackaging, sachetization, shrinkflation, where everybody's trying to put some goods out there so that people will still be able to buy some of these goods. we know of the major challenges in 2023 as it related to human capital, logistics, and the last mile, just getting those products to where consumers were going to look at it, issues relating to rent, transportation, jackpot of staff, which was a major aspect in 2023. But what are the opportunities we see in that market from a Nairametrics point of view? Consumers are willing to patronize brands for lower cost, and you can see a number of FMCGs have gone into the sachet area. Um, Others are doing delivery at the lowest cost possible. For example, Cold Stone is using Keke to move ice cream to their consumers as part of delivery. They need to start looking at local sourcing of raw materials to hedge against volatility of exchange rate and additional investments through partnership with local raw material producers. Collaboration in different areas to boost economies of scales in the area of technology, cost synergies amongst players within the sector, and also some of the initiatives to support the economy by the federal government, such as creation of trade intelligence units by the Ministry of Trade, as well as boosting food production by the Ministry of Agriculture. How do the FMCGs collaborate with these ministries and see how they can improve on the fortunes within that sector? We know that if there were a number of exits in 2023. GlaxoSmithKline left Nigeria in August. Mabisco Biscuit left in October 2023. Procter & Gamble was the last in December 2023, citing forex and macroeconomic issues. Mabisco decided that they were going to sell that line and focus on other areas. Glaxo were looking at challenges in assessing forex as major contributors to those exits. Are we looking at more exits in 2024? According to a report by Cardinal Stone, the strategic resilience, sailing through business disruption, they look at some of the things that they think will persist in 2024. High operating costs for FMCGs, highly vulnerable to fluctuations in commodity prices, exchange rates, import duties, and freight costs for those who are still heavily dependent on importing raw materials. Sector is highly vulnerable to fluctuations in exchange rates. We've seen some companies convert some of their loans from foreign currency into ordinary shares, and others are looking at different ways to see how they can do that just to hedge against FX losses. They may not benefit from the moderation of global commodity prices as a result of exchange rates. Increased energy costs in 2024. All this we think could lead to some more exits from the Nigerian market. Hopefully not more, not many. And then what are the opportunities that they see? Companies will need to realign their operational strategies for better efficiency. They need to start working on collaborations to boost economics of scales, product portfolio diversification, revenue and cost synergies, technology and innovation, like we spoke about earlier. The report also noted that there could be possibilities of some companies exiting operating environments or high cost segments and just focusing on areas they think are best suited for what they have currently, and the high potential for increased borrowing, which would result from the combined effect of dollar-denominated loans being translated into Naira. What other things do we see? What is the federal government putting in place towards trying to assist the trade economy as a whole? We're looking at the federal government through its 8-point agenda, talking about consumer credit uptake in Nigeria to enable sustainable credit systems for the country in line with global best practices. This, we think, would boost consumer spending, which in a way will create opportunities for FMCGs to increase their outputs as more and more people are having access to credit and being able to turn around the cash within their pockets. We're looking at the launch of the Trade Intelligence Unit to ensure trade is a major tool to stimulate economic growth. And the Trade intelligence unit will be the national coordinator and focal point for trade-related data and information in Nigeria. This, I think, will be useful to a number of the FMCGs towards, the ease of doing business, better understanding customers, and gather data about big consumer spending in different areas and different parts of the country in which I think or Nairametrics does think that they can see opportunities, on that note, thank you very much. And then I hand back over to Joanna to continue the section. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yuade. An awesome presentation there, and definitely a lot to look out for. In case you're just joining us, this is the Industry Economic Outlook hosted by Nairametrics. We are focusing on the fast-moving consumer goods sector. So much is happening, like I said. So it's going to be divided into, I believe, 4 sessions. The first session, let me just get this right. The first session, of course, we're going to focus on decoding price elasticity, shifting consumer behavior. We know that there are responses to everything that's happening in the economy right now. As well, the second session, we'll be looking at building resilient supply chain in a turbulent economy. The third session will be unveiling consumer preferences and navigating affordability. The fourth and final session, again, pioneering innovations, right? What can we do to adapt to these changes, innovative ways? So pioneering innovations and crafting irresistible product offerings at a time like this. And of course, we have our key speakers for today who are going to be giving us a ton of insights into all of that and more. So let's begin with the first session, right? And we're starting with you, Ogaga Ologe. Remember, if you're listening, you have a question, the chat room is open for you. Keep your comments coming through, your questions as well. When it's time, we'll pick out the questions that drive this conversation further. So let's begin with you, Ogaga. We know that a lot of economic variables are shifting, changing. As a result, we are seeing a rise in production cost, which is, of course, has led to a rise in price of goods and services. A lot of industries are having to pay closer attention to responsiveness and concepts like price elasticity and consumer behavior. So why would you say that these concepts are key to various industries at a time like this, concepts like price elasticity and consumer behavior?
Yeah, I know you start with the finance person because that's where the money comes from. Actually, see, I think if I was trying to go through your this presentation and what he said. If I look at my career in the FMCG, I think the closest we have to what we're facing now was in 2016 and 17, and it wasn't this bad. I think the rate moved, and I think it was stable for a while. Then we took actions, and we're able to recover in no time. But I think what's happening now, it's like it's a common thing. I think for the past 2 3 years now, we've been having rate movement. So, and of course, every company has to make profits. That is what's going to keep the company running. If you have an organization that keeps on making losses, definitely that organization will have whether either have to leave Nigeria or pack up and close shop. So I think for price elasticity and consumer behavior, it's extremely important that we study that as a company, because price elasticity tells you, as in if you take pricing, as in what is the level of people that will probably stop buying your products. How many volumes would you technically lose because of the pricing you're taking? So you need to study consumer behavior to understand. As in, there's some consumers that are extremely very loyal to your products. So maybe those ones will say, okay, there's a 5-10% jump in price. They would understand that, okay, we understand what is happening in the country. I will still continue to buy this particular product. But there are some that say, oh, there's a 5-10%. Okay, what is the closest competition? What's the closest product that I can buy that will still give me the same feeling, but at the same time, I will have to move. So technically, you've lost that consumer and you've lost that particular product, particular sales that is coming from that particular consumer. So these are important things that FMCGs study just to understand if I take pricing, what is the level of volumes I will lose. So because if I lose that volumes, I'll probably reach out to someone like Toby to say, okay, my volumes were maybe 10,000 tons last year. Because I'm taking this particular pricing, I'm forecasting my volumes to be 8,000 tons. So he now needs to plan his resources to be able to deliver those volumes. So you can see how it plays. Because so if I don't study the consumer behavior, the price elasticity, I'll not be able to plan my volumes accordingly, and I'll not get the normal resources I need to be able to run the operation. So that's why it's extremely very important that we observe consumer behavior and determine the price elasticity to the pricing actions that we take to remain competitive in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to remain competitive at a time like this, right? Interesting that you mentioning, brand loyalty. It seems right now that, consumers are more loyal to their pockets than anything, right now. But moving on to the next question, how do you think companies can make use? I mean, you've broken down these concepts for us, right? Price elasticity, and so on, right? So how do you think companies can make the best to determine their rates, as well as not fall into the trap of price gouging? I mean, that's happening right now, and I believe there was a supermarket that was shut down somewhere in Abuja because of that. So how do you think they can make use of that price elasticity to determine their rates and not fall into the trap of price gouging?
Okay, so I think for most it helps. So it helps your planning. So we all know that taking pricing is inevitable. As in, we've seen from the presentation how the rate has moved within a period of 12 months. It's like close to about 300% devaluation. And for us in FMCG, I think why we're mostly hit is while other companies they're not solely dependent on exports or imports into Nigeria. We are also dependent on import because not all the materials that are available in Nigeria, and some, of course, we have to get offshore. So we are largely impacted by the FX devaluation. And apart from that, you also see cost of things in the country is rising. Transportation costs are significantly increased. Diesel costs is on the rise. So all these are things that, apart from FX rate, you're also being impacted by other input costs that you use for production. So we use price elasticity to actually determine the volumes we'll produce in a year because you have to plan your production process, you plan your cost in a year because planning is actually extremely very important. It tells you if I know that my volumes will drop by about 20%, what would now be the cost of producing the new volumes? That will help me to determine the price of what I'm going to sell. So I've taken into consideration the loss in volume because you know that most of us have actually built infrastructures to actually produce what we're selling. So if I'm not able to absorb all the cost of the infrastructure, then it will also impact my planning because I also need to ensure that all the cost of production is properly absorbed into what I sell. So that will help me to fix the selling price. So if I plan a wrong volume, that means my costing is wrong. That means my entire year is screwed. So you can see that getting the as much as possible an accurate price elasticity will determine what the cost of goods that I'm selling would be. And also as an organization, you now determine what the selling price of that particular cost of good is. But I think the problem we're seeing now is that you're not just getting cost increase in a month, you're getting cost increases every month because the dollar has moved between 1.2 and 1 to 1.5 just within 30 days. So imagine you've made your plan in January and you've probably planned at 1.2 or 1.3, then now it's 1.5. So you need to reassess your planning and actually talk to the guys in supply chain to say, okay, this has happened. I have to take pricing, and this will probably be the likely volume loss I envisage from the price loss from the pricing that we've taken. So they have to do the computation to say, okay, what is the new cost of goods? So with that, you then fix your selling price and also begin to move. So the concept of price elasticity and actually I'm planning my full cost for the year is actually very important, and it's something that we do regularly now because of the consistent change in the dollar rates.
Yeah, I mean, consistent change in the environment, as you pointed out, I mean, nobody envies business owners or manufacturers right now because, I mean, planning for the year with the rates of change and how frequently things are changing, I mean, that can be quite complex. But thank you for highlighting, those points. Ogaga, I'm still staying with you, and with all these shifts and changes, you've broken down, how they can incorporate the use of price elasticity and, partly consumer behavior. But with all these shifts and economic variables, consumers obviously adapt. Their behaviors change. Spending patterns are altered as expected during an economic downturn. Inflation, we have it at 20. Actually, the latest data from MBS placed inflation rates at for January 2024 at 29.90%. How would you say this is affecting spending patterns?
It is. I think most times when I go to supermarkets, I observe myself and also the guys who are spending. So you see that there are different types of shoppers you see. Maybe you go to the supermarket, you probably buy like 4 rows of your particular lovely brand, with the cost of things going up, you probably see a consumer trying to drop from 4 to 2 to 1. So they probably don't, because of also usage, they don't want a situation whereby you have so much of this in the house, the kids will probably now use as much as they like. So you now probably do rationing. So I buy less of the products. And if I'm a consumer loyalist, I probably buy less of my favorite product. I take it home for the kids to use because they love it. While you see some, okay, you know what? Oh, my kids like using this particular product, so I'll buy probably just some of it, and I'll buy the closest, which is also so much cheaper. So I probably give them their favorite in the morning. Then in the evening, when they're about to go to school, I give them a different type of beverage, so that they can now start getting used to a different taste. So I think consumers are becoming very wise. They're actually checking their pockets and how much can I afford. So it's not just about extreme brand loyalists. It's actually extreme as in how much of this can I afford. So while some of them also do down trading. So if I buy a jar of my favorite brand, what they now do is that because you put a jar in the house, the kids can use it. The portion control is very difficult to control. So now they buy sachets. They're probably not down trade to sachets. So I just cut one sachet for the kids to use. So with that, I can manage the resources I have at home. So I think there's a lot of things happening from the consumer side. So I think they are actually doing their best to see how they can actually ration the limited funds that they have, because we see that government has not technically increased the minimum wage, and that's what it's you see on the price to see how much of increase would the civil servants get so as they can continue to afford. Because there's some states you go to, your consumers are mostly civil servants. So if their income has not changed, you would see that their behavior would change significantly. They will try to adjust their spending to actually relate to the pocket, to what they have, and not just buy because I love this particular brand, but actually buy what they can afford. So we've seen that changes in different types of consumers that actually buy our products.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that. Portion control, the use of sachets to control portions and all of that, and somewhat tame demand. I mean, that's something we see happening. But let's zero in across industries and still speaking on price elasticities, elasticity. Please, the factors that that you would say are affecting price elasticity, things like product type. You've spoken a bit about brand loyalty, but more into that, right? Brand loyalty, is that coming to play here? Availability of substitutes, right? The substitution effect. How are all these interacting and coming to play to affect pricing? And how does this differ across industries?
Okay, so I think the of course we have two types of elasticity. We have some products that are technically inelastic. If you look at bread, for instance, we've seen the significant rise in the cost of bread, but still people are still buying it because it's a staple food and we need it to survive. You also talk about some other products like that, maybe fuel. And I think for Nigerians, the beer is something that you use all the time. If you're frustrated, you have to drink beer. If you're happy, you drink beer. So you have everything you do, you probably take alcohol. So for there are some products that are the elasticity is extremely very high, like the luxury products. So you want to use maybe drink a beverage, it's good for the kids, but sometimes it's actually the affordability is really very important. So sometimes when the price of those products goes up significantly, you see that the elasticity is actually very huge. And also you have substitutes all over the world, all over the country, as in you see a particular product that is probably 200 naira. You see the closest substitute is 50 naira. While the 200 naira one is very rich, creamy, nice, and nutritious, the 50 naira is just sweet. So what consumers look at is if it is sweet, it's fine. I'm okay with it. I don't want the all the different nutrients that come with it. So for those products that the elasticity is extremely very high, so you see that most consumers who cannot afford it will probably just afford the just product that is just sweet and cheap and tacky. But when it comes to the premium ones, they will probably leave it and say, okay, you know what, maybe once in a month, I'll probably buy this particular product and enjoy it. But for a daily survival, I'll probably go for the cheaper ones. So we've seen consumers moving from the nice premium products, they've actually gone to the low tacky cheap products. And the funny thing about in Nigeria is that all these things are available. So if you're a premium consumer, you buy probably a particular product that is very nice, and the product has gone to from 200 naira a sachet, so about 500 naira a sachet. It is huge. But you have a similar product that is also beverage, but it's cheap and it's still 150, 100 naira. As a consumer, you would technically move to the one that is cheaper and save some money. But those who probably love premium and who are extremely loyal to a particular brand might stay, but their usage will drop. So these are the things that affect elasticity. Some products, of course, is critical. It's priority. You have to buy them for survival. There are some you give yourself a treat. So in giving yourself a treat, instead of probably giving myself a treat on a daily basis, I'll probably now start saying, okay, every Sunday I'll give myself a good treat. And of course, that particular action of the consumer has affected the volume of the company that they're buying those products from. So these are things that has happened over the past few months that we've seen, and that has actually helped our planning because the fact of the matter is that, and why most FMCGs will leave is you cannot continue to make a loss. It's not possible. It's not sustainable. So you just need to accept the reality, take necessary pricing you need to take to remain competitive and remain operational. Then plan with the reality on ground because this is the reality. We can't change the reality, but we can react and change our behavior to adopt the new reality.
All right, adaptation, right? That's crucial for survival, right? Thank you so much. Whether as a business or as an individual, we're seeing both responses and reactions to all these economic variables shifting and changing. Ladies and gentlemen, Ogaga Ologe, he's the financial director of Cadbury Nigeria PLC. Toby Adeni, we're still together, yeah? Right, great. He's
Yes, we are. Yes,
great. He's a customer supply chain director for Unilever West Africa, and I'm sure you've been following everything Ogaga has been saying. It's been great to hear from you. I mean, it's evident that there are situations that will occur and have and may still occur because things are changing very quickly. That will warrant necessary price adjustments. How can fast-moving consumer good companies successfully convey value to customers and retain their customers at a time like this?
thank you, Joanna. I think Ogaga has really captured the key elements and the context, because at the end of the day, the most important thing is, first of all, to know your consumer. And I dare say as well to know your shopper, because at times the shopper may be different from the consumer. But overall, investing in consumer insight, I think is very, very crucial, because that is the basis for why FMCG companies exist. You need to understand what the consumer wants. Assume you do not know, because again, in the industry at times, one major aspect we need to be careful of is assuming we know what the consumer wants. And so we shouldn't underrate that at all. I think maybe just to set the context a bit in terms of driving home the point. If you look at Mercedes, for example, in 1993, they introduced the C-Class. And, C-Class was sort of supposed to be an entry point, for those who aspired to use, to drive a Mercedes. And what Mercedes had done was they maintained the elegance, the essence of the brand, but then made it a bit more affordable, and accessible, right? And that is, driving the point on understanding your consumers, because they might be willing to pay a bit more just to experience the prestige of being a user of the brand. On the flip side, iPhone at some point introduced the 5C model a couple of years ago, and it did not meet their estimates in terms of what they wanted to achieve with the phone. But that was Apple's way of trying to reach, further down in terms of across the ladder or the social strata of consumers to see, okay, can we make it a bit more affordable? But the interesting thing was, the one major feedback that was given was that, you changed it to a plastic cover and people felt it was a cheap knockoff. And by the way, this was still more expensive than, equivalent Android phones at that point in time. So, I think the point is therefore that knowing the consumer is very, very key to whatever it is you are defining in your portfolio. And it is therefore, what determines the pricing, the pack format, the pack size, and the rest of it. So in terms of how, FMCGs can convey value to customers, as you've asked, that's sort of the starting point. Because if you miss it at that point, then everything else, you're just sort of chasing shadows. Bringing it a bit back into a bit, the industry, it's also about understanding that functionality is key. And you should not compromise on that, because as a brand, your brand has an image, and therefore the functionality it delivers is something that determines the reputation of your brand. And to the point, Ogaga had made, you need to, therefore, as an organization, determine how far across the pyramid of consumers you want to serve. And at what point do you say, you know what, for the kind of functionality I'm trying to deliver with my brand at X Naira, it is just not going to be affordable. And I think the way that is, I would coin that, which I borrowed from a colleague, what really determines how far you're willing to go. To the point which Gaga had made on some products, some are a bit more, elastic than others. But, for a certain product or a certain brand, you say, look, at this point in time, I know that if I go above, let's say 5,000 Naira for this pack, I would lose my consumers. I would lose people. But I'm willing to lose a bit. However, still maintain the product offering, still keep, my loyal consumers. I might lose in volume, but overall, in terms of the shape of my P&L, I'm still able to at least be a going concern. So I think that is where you begin to differentiate when it comes to the whole concept of conveying value to consumers, even when you have to make price adjustments. So obviously, in summary, it's really to ensure that product superiority is there in terms of your offering is, that your offering, you can beat your chest to say, look, my product can deliver. And then you start segmenting your portfolio in terms of, do I need an entry pack? How far down the ladder do I want to give accessibility on? And then that shapes, the portfolio of your business going forward.
Yeah, but thank you very much for that, Toby. I mean, assume nothing, invest in the research, know your customer, know your shopper. Thank you for that. And, just looking forward, right? What are some of the emerging trends that you foresee when it comes to price elasticity and consumer behavior? Ogaga has spoken on this a bit, but I would love to hear your perspective. What are some of the emerging trends that you foresee when it comes to price elasticity, consumer behavior? Are there innovations or shifts that you find particularly interesting or challenging?
Thank you. So, I mean, I think maybe just to add to what Ogaga has shared, because I think he's covered it robustly. I think, and also to the point that was made earlier in the presentation, shrinkflation is already here. I think we all know it. We see it. We've seen also videos on social media where we say, oh, my favorite brand was this, maybe the pack size before was this much, and now it's reduced, or half of it is filled with air and the rest of it. So I think shrinkflation is here already. Right. So that's one thing which obviously I wouldn't say is emerging anymore. It's already hitting us. I think the other thing also is what I would call magic price points are shifting, So in the past, if we come to the level of what I would term as daily usage, by daily usage, I mean, I buy a small sachet of detergent for one wash. I buy sorry, I think there's, okay. I buy maybe a small pack of milk or beverage just for one drink. You know, daily usage is an area where previously you would be seeing price points at the region of maybe about 20 naira. You know, and 20 basically is the new 50. 50 is probably the new 100. So we're seeing the price points gradually shift, you know, upwards. And at this trajectory, it's probably only a matter of time that you probably can't get anything for. I doubt you can even get sweets for 20 naira anymore. At best, maybe it's 3 for 50 and those sort of things, which probably has also moved upwards. So, you know, you see the price points and coinage move up as well over time. I think also you would begin to see a bit of more creative solutions. You have a lot more companies sort of, would I say, widening their portfolios, trying to test different industries or different segments, just, you know, to leverage on scale, because as you operate in certain segments and it starts shrinking, you know, you probably want to sort of widen the size of the pond so that you're able to balance out your portfolio based on scale. Right. And then you would see, obviously, for consumers, which is essentially you and I, will begin to also straddle across that pyramid of disposable income. And therefore, people have to make conscious choices. I think the one thing that I would say, however, that maybe sticks out is, if you are operating in the FMCG industry, you probably need to have a rethink or mindset shift on who your competition is. So today, if you are in the business of selling soap, you need to understand that you are not just contesting with another brand of soap. You are contesting with transport fares. You are contesting with GoTV subscription. You are contesting with energy-saving appliances, because as a consumer, we are making conscious decisions on everything. I have a pot of money that is available to me. And previously, I was allocating a certain percentage to clothing, to electricity, to transport, to buying phone credit. And as the affordability begins to sort of wane, I need to make conscious decisions. So I think the most important thing really is for FMCG companies to understand how to position their brands in the mind of the consumer. You know, are you essential or are you discretionary? And you know, as much as possible, you try to fall into the essential category, such that you get consumers to a point where they believe that, you know, they can't go about their daily lives without interacting with your product. And so I think you would begin to see a lot more of, would I say, campaigns and the rest of it, and engagements that try to appeal to the hearts, to the emotion of consumers as well.
Right. Thank you so much for that. I mean, you know, producers and, you know, those in various industries are definitely going to have to be on their toes. As you have pointed out, I mean, broadening your competition is broader. You have to acknowledge that and make sure that you are essential. You're providing something essential, something somewhat indispensable. But we've sat on the supply side of things for a while, and I mean, both our speakers have done an awesome job with breaking that down for us. We're shifting now to the supply end of things, and if you're listening and you have a question, feel free to drop it in below. There's a chat box, there's also a Q&A box, so make sure you put it in the right box. I'll be sure to get down to that. So we're moving on to the next session. Real quick, time is not exactly on our side. Building resilient supply chain in a turbulent economy. And Toby, I know this is your playground more or less. So we're going to begin with you, right? We can imagine the FMCG industry facing a number or a lot of obstacles in order to keep its supply chain robust. What are some of the biggest obstacles in that regard, and how can industries beat the odds, the likes of fuel subsidy removal, cost of production going up, and, you know, many other obstacles, which I'm sure you named for us, to meet their supply needs?
Yes, this is the pain of a supply chain professional today in Nigeria. I think the obstacles are clear, which is that absolute cost is skyrocketing, and this erodes on gross margin and profitability. And of course, that is why then businesses have to take decisions on price increases and the rest of it. So maybe in terms of answering your question, I probably will focus more on the second part, which is how to meet the supply chain needs amidst these challenges. I think obviously the first thing to say is that there's probably no silver bullet on this, and we are sort of winging it and making it up as we continue. But I think the first advice I would give is to embrace volatility. It's almost like you ride the wave and expect it to happen. There is something I always say, which is plan for the worst and hope for the best, because there's no point lamenting about, for example, the price of diesel going up. It may or will continue to go up. So you're better off spending your time wondering how you run your supply chain. If diesel were to get to 2,000 naira, for example, or 2,500 naira, and I think the first thing to do is to operate with a unit cost mentality. Don't fall into the trap of averages or absolutes. To say, oh, my cost of distribution has gone up, for example. No, it's what is your cost to serve? What is the cost to serve per unit or per pack? And also what is my cost of production per unit per pack? Because the moment you narrow it down to that level and you say, it cost me, for example, 30 naira 50 kobo to produce one sachet of maybe an alcoholic product, for example. Last year, it cost me 30 naira 50 kobo. This year, it is costing me 45 naira. How do I bring that cost down? What do I need to do? So that is the mentality in which, you need to begin to operate within the supply chain. And as simple as it sounds, that is what then sort of expands into, for example, if we talk about cost to serve, is maybe you're an FMCG company delivering across Nigeria, and you are doing maybe 4 trips a month, which is maybe 1 trip a week of 10, maybe a 10-ton truck to Kano. In doing this exercise, you might come to the realization that actually, maybe I should just be doing 1 trip a month to Kano with a 50-ton truck. And therefore, I go back to engage, my colleagues in sales and the rest of it to say, can we consolidate the orders, the shipments, and the rest of it? And then also work with, your sales partners in terms of the distributors on also obviously trying to optimize their working capital. I think the point is you begin to see the supply chain as a value creation unit and not a cost center. When you begin to operate as a value creation entity, then you start, thinking along these lines. And then when you go back to the business, you're coming back to them with very, very specific initiatives and ideas on what needs to be done. It could even be in terms of the nature of the kind of packaging that is used for materials, or even in raw materials, the kind of formulation and the rest of it. You see a lot of initiatives within the procurement area today where, we have procurement professionals coming up with very, very innovative solutions on how to ensure that, we land our products at the most optimal cost without mortgaging quality away. So, from a supply chain perspective, these are some of the tactical things which you can do in terms of also your operations. But I think the foundation of all of it, really and truly in the Nigerian context today is you just need to aim for, Forex neutrality and try to cut your dependence on Forex as much as you can. whether it's backward integration, whether it's through localization, whatever it is, whether it's taking up your export, you just need to find a way to, as much as possible, de-dollarize your supply chain across the value chain. It's easier said than done, but that is the foundation of what needs to be done.
Yeah, because I mean, there are factors within, there are factors with that outside as well that are causing prices of things to go up. Cost of, I mean, transportation alone, fuel subsidy removal, those are, some of the internal factors. But I'm sure there's a way around it. And I mean, I can only imagine how small and medium-sized FMCGs are coping at a time like this. They often run on a tight budget. How can they strengthen their resilience or the resilience of their supply chain at a time like this? In 3 minutes, please.
Okay. So for small and medium-sized FMCGs, I think the unit cost mentality point I raised still speaks to that. I think that irrespective of size, you need to get into that level of understanding. I think also my advice would be to understand your suppliers better. So build beyond transactional relationships with your suppliers. And, depending on the industry you are into, if, for example, you are even into the clothing industry and you get all your materials from, let's say, China, it might be worth it for you to take a trip to China and really understand the value chain of your suppliers. And that way you begin to work with your suppliers, from a partnership perspective, not from a transactional perspective. I think that is something that would really help in terms of improving your resilience in supply chain, because then you are able to better plan as you begin to experience volatility on ground. And of course, I think it's also a case of understanding the core of your operations. The fact that it's a small and medium sized industry and company does not mean that you should not get into the details from time to operations. Join your delivery, spend time on the shop floor and observe. You don't need to tell them or correct them every point in time. Just observe what they do. And you will be able to start spotting areas where you can drive more efficiency. Yeah, and of course, forex neutrality is still it applies to everyone in the industry.
The FX factor. So yeah, more research. Do not assume anything, and go beyond the transactional relationships. Actually build a solid relationship with your consumer. Still staying with you before I head over to Ogaga, what are some of the contributions, the role of technology in all of this? What contributions do technical developments play in strengthening the resilience of supply chains, and which particular technologies specifically have shown to be especially successful?
So I think in supply chain, this is probably an area that excites me a lot, but I'll try to keep it short. Maybe I'll start by saying this. If we look at the auto mechanic industry today in Nigeria, about 10, 15 years ago, you would take your car to the mechanic and, the mechanic typically would do a bit of trial and error to say, oh, is the air filter, oh, is the fuel filter, oh, it is the brake pad and all of that. And then gradually we are seeing a situation where you're having a lot more entities now. They plug in the scanner and very easily, it diagnoses what the problem is, and then they are able to focus on that. But still, we have a lot of mechanics that would sort of do it the old school way. And I think that is the analogy I use in terms of bringing technology into the supply chain. If you continue to sort of work in the past, in the way things were done in the past, you would continue to be inefficient because the world has moved on. You cannot continue to operate in that way. In terms, and I'm not talking about the advanced things like robotics and the rest of it. It's just basic things. You could begin to have sensors on your machines, such that the moment there is a downtime, you punch in the reason for downtime immediately, and then if you resolve it, you also punch it in immediately. And what that does is you start pulling out trends. You start getting a lot of data, historical data that is being, dumped into the cloud or into the Internet of Things. And then you are able to, draw solutions for the future going forward. In the same vein, it's about things like your forecasting, how you forecast demand. There are so many solutions from an AI perspective today. There are tools like Era, there are tools like Kinaxis that can help you, quickly crunch some of this data such that all you're doing is making sense of the data, as opposed to spending 80% of your time crunching the actual data. And I think it's a journey, it's a journey because you have to balance between cost for some of these initiatives and, the scale of operations. And so I'm not saying it's a switch that you just go on immediately, but, I think it's first of all to accept that this is the direction in which things are going. And when you are clear on that, then you know that there are tools that can help you run your supply chain that straddles across cost, cash, inventory, the changeovers, the frequency of changeovers, how often you should produce certain packs and the rest of it. And then even from the angle of customer service as well, if it takes your customer service personnel 4 hours in a day to attend to, say, 50 customers, but then you have similar role, similar person in India, same 4 hours is able to attend to 1,000 customers, because some basic inquiries have sort of been handled by bots because all of the data is available on the system. Yeah. What do we think will happen eventually in the future? So if we're not careful, we get left behind. And so the summary of it is data-driven decision-making, is the order of the day today. You add that on top of experience, and then what it does is it helps you to really optimize your supply chain. At times, we tend to err on the side of leaning on experience alone. And so that's why, technology is there to, to help us.
Yeah, I mean, it's uncharted territory for many right now, so experience might not cut it. So having the technology that gathers the data, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for that, Toby.
Thank you.
I'm coming to you, Ogaga, and of course, it's 2024 and COVID-19 is still collecting stray bullets, right? It's still taking the blame for something. How would you say that COVID-19 epidemic affected FMCG companies long-term, right? Supply chain resilience strategies. How would you say that, COVID-19 had a role in that, in FMCG's companies' long-term supply chain resilience strategies?
Yeah, I think although COVID-19 we lost a lot of people with that pandemic, but the truth of the matter is that I think it has helped us to see some of the flaws we had in our supply chain, and also even the way we sell to our customers. And we saw that very clear during the pandemic. I think that has helped our sourcing strategy. Do we, like I think Toby also mentioned about, do we localize rather than, or do we go with the pain of getting things from offshore? We saw the global containerization issue that also affected availability of raw materials for some FMCGs. But I think post COVID-19, we've seen that some of these materials that we source from offshore, is available locally. Just some tweaking on some of the materials will probably give us something equivalent to what we are sourcing. And also in terms of how do we even source, what is our safety stock levels? All this has actually helped us to review our processes so as not to be in that kind of situation, and probably helped us see some of the flaws we had in our supply chain sourcing strategy. Also from the customer selling side, we've also seen how can we even in terms of shipping to customers, do we come up with drop-off locations? Why do I need to send a truck to a particular customer when it's actually close to another customer? So do I come up with a drop-off location, or do I combine stocks of two different customers together so that I would probably save on logistics cost? Also from the ways of selling, many times people love to go to the open markets to buy things. And when COVID-19 came, because of contact issues whereby you could contact somebody and get the disease, people now start shopping in supermarkets. So we also saw that we had low. We had, in terms of us selling to our supermarkets, neighborhood stores was a bit challenging. But I think during that pandemic, we're able to revamp our selling process in terms of ensuring that our products are available in neighborhood stores, in nearby supermarkets, so that consumers do not need to actually go far to an open market to get what they need. Rather, in the neighborhood stores, they can actually pick that. So I think we automated our secondary selling process by bringing out systems in place that will tell us when you have stock out in a particular supermarket, you would know. When you have stock out in a particular wholesaler or retailer, you would know. So that has given us insight to the extent that you can actually sell to the neighborhood supermarket, and that is actually very close to the consumer. So, but we've invested a lot of things in terms of getting products closer to the consumer rather than expecting consumers to go to a far open market to get the product of their choice. So that you could probably buy once in a month in an open market because the price may be competitive and okay. But in a supermarket, you could just go there regularly to get your products there. So how do we ensure that our products are readily available in those supermarkets? I think we've invested a lot to ensure that it's done. And we've seen that our sales in those supermarkets have actually significantly grown over the past 2-3 years. And our products are readily available in most outlets than it used to be before the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think it actually opened our eyes to how do we sell, how do we source, and how do we ensure that our materials we, instead of going that far to pick up something, you could actually go to a nearby state to pick a material that you need for production.
So, I mean, more positives, right? It sounds like you're saying COVID-19 prepared us for a time like this.
Yes.
Yeah? Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for that, Ogaga. Ogaga Ologa is the financial director for Cadbury Nigeria. And well, we're going on to the third session now. And in case you're just joining us, this is Nairametrics Industry Economic Outlook. We're focusing on the FMCG, the sector's challenges and some of the opportunities ahead. We'll get round to your questions in just a bit, but you can drop them there. So this section, right, the third section, unveiling consumer preferences and navigating affordability. We've touched a bit on it earlier. And I'm sure, I mean, it was pointed out earlier that, a lot of people, loyalty to their pockets than to brands at this point. So let's stick with you, Ogaga, on this one, right? For FMCGs and firms looking to preserve the affordability of their products, simultaneously guaranteeing and not compromising on quality. I mean, I remember Toby's talking about shrinkflation. That's a reality. Not compromising on quality. What obstacles must they surmount, and how can they do that at a time like this?
I think Toby shared some vital light on this. Prior to now, we all talked about magic price points. If I want to sell a sachet of a piece of candy, like a piece of candy probably goes for 5 naira, I think 2016, 2017. Because you can't sell for 6 naira, 7 naira, 8 naira, your next price point is 10 naira. So you need to now move to 10 naira when there's a pricing. And I think for now, magic price point is something that's very difficult to keep. Because if I want to sell my candy for 10 naira, I'll be selling at a loss. So I need to look for I can't actually wait for the next price point to say, okay, you know what, should I sell for 15 or 20 naira? So I think I have to probably shelve the magic price point and think of, okay, how much do I need to sell the piece of candy that would probably sustain us? Because like Toby said, we can't keep on blaming there's diesel cost that's gone up, FX. These are problems that have come to stay. So how can you manage these problems and ensure that you are able to manage your consumer offtake and at the same time ensure that you're profitable? But the point is that we also need to be mindful as multinationals, or even as not necessarily multinationals, as a manufacturing company, quality is actually very important. Quality is something that you should be known for, because the point is that if things are tough now, like that saying that says when the preferable is not affordable, the affordable becomes the preferable. But when times change, when your situation changes and you have more money, you need to go back to the brand you love to say, okay, you know what, I can afford this now. And you go back to that particular brand. But imagine if the quality of that particular brand has gone down, and you want to go back and say, okay, I have the money to buy this now. And you go back to that, but you'll be disappointed. So you expect that the quality remains the same. So to keep quality the same, it's extremely very expensive. It's not something that is readily affordable. So to answer the first part of the question, the magic price point thing is, I think right now it's a thing of the past, because there are some prices you want to keep, but keeping those prices is extremely very difficult in a situation whereby your input cost changes every day. If you go to the supermarket, I think I've seen that myself. You see a particular price in the counter to say this particular product is 1,500 naira. When you go to the till to pay, they will say, sorry, we've not updated that price. On the system is now 2,000 naira. So you can see that people prices will keep on changing until probably things decide to stabilize. But the fact is that you would the magic price point thing is probably a thing of the past, and I think you just need to put prices down that consumers can appreciate, because the quality of that product remains the same. But also, one thing we've also seen now is, how do you do what they call PPA? PPA is your packaging. We're looking at your packaging structure to say, okay, if a sachet of Bonvita is 20 gram, let's say you have the 20-gram Bonvita. If I move to 18 gram, will I be able to still give consumer what they want? So there are a lot of research that needs to happen to ensure that if I change my size of my pack, especially for the single serve items, will consumer, because you cannot tell consumer the cup they'll probably pour their beverage on. Some may use very small cups, some may use maybe a big mug. So you also need to be mindful of what mugs are available in the houses of our consumers, so that they ensure that when they pour the sachet of Bonvita or sachet of Milo or sachet of Ovaltine, they are still able to get the same taste that they need to get, because they know the quantity of water they put in. So if you imagine, if you reduce your grammage from, let's say, 20 gram to 18 gram or 15 gram, and the consumer now pour that particular sachet to a cup, and it doesn't taste the way it tastes before, the consumer will start thinking that the quality of that product has reduced, and probably will not buy that particular product again. So you can see how consumer research is actually very, very important. So before you change your packaging, or before you change the serve of your product, you need to do extensive research to really understand what will consumer behavior be, so that you do not lose your consumers, the loyal ones. And also at the same time, you try to keep your quality to ensure that the quality of products remain the same. So it's a difficult process, because right, and if you want to stay the way you are, you are no longer affordable. The consumer will start probably looking for what is affordable. Like what Toby said, we're not competing against ourselves. Nestle and Cadbury is not competing against who's going to buy Bonvita 20 gram or Nestle 20 gram. That's not the competition again. The competition is against things that, like fuel, transportation, bread, all the things that consumer uses their money to buy, because it's a matter of choice. And as a consumer, you prioritize what is the thing I should go for first. Then every other thing, it's what I now need to allocate my funds to. So you also need to ensure that you remain in the minds of consumers. Your brand visibility is there, so that they are able to pick and remember that this product exists. So there's a lot that needs to happen to ensure that in times like this, we are still able to remain in the minds of our consumers, and also ensure that we give them the quality product that they are used to.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for that, Ogaga. And I mean, research, research, research. That's all I hear. Knowing your customer, knowing your consumer, knowing your shopper as well. This next question, you sort of already answered it, but perhaps you may want to provide more insight, right? It's still on market research and how it can be adopted to provide a better understanding of consumer preference in the industry. Is there anything you want to add to what you have already said?
Yeah, so I think market research is extremely important, because if you do not know, see, consumers' behavior changes. So if you don't update your knowledge of how a consumer behaves, like for instance, it was through market research we understood from how a mother spends her money to say, you know what, because let's say Bonvita 20 gram is now expensive. Because if you go to the supermarkets, they arrange all these products together. So it's not that you keep our products far from one place. You see Bonvita 20 gram, you see the price there, you see Nestle, you see Ovaltine, you see Cowbell, you see Twisco, you see all those products there, and the prices are different. So if a particular customer is used to a particular product, so what the behavior is that I'll buy small of this and I'll buy the cheaper ones. So in the morning, I give my child maybe this particular product. In the evening, I give them a different product. I'm trying to get them to get used to a different thing, because I cannot afford this particular product anymore again. So those are things that you observe when you do consumer research, when you go to the homes of your consumers to understand how they spend their money. So imagine if you had a knowledge, let's say in 2019, it has changed, because the behavior has changed. And because you never can tell that why would somebody give a child two different brands. It's all about the money that they have and also how they go to the market. Oh, I go to the market when salaries are being paid. I go to market, I buy everything in bulk, and this is how I buy them. So that would also help us to plan to ensure that, okay, the consumer behave this way. How do I, as a multinational, how do I, as an FMCG producer, how do I behave so that my planning is sync with how the consumers behave? But the fact is that while we have different layers of what we sell, how we sell. For instance, we sell to probably the distributors. Distributors probably can sell to the wholesalers, the retailers. But the final person who consumes the product is the consumer. If the consumer does not come to the store to ask for your particular product, the retailer will not pick you, will not probably stock you, or will probably reduce the stock of your products that is available in those outlets. So it is important for FMCG to actually understand how the consumers behave on a regular basis, because things are changing because of the cost of items are going up. So you need to try to refresh your understanding of consumer behavior, because that will actually help you to plan well and probably know what to do now that you're probably taking pricing to remain profitable in the industry.
Thank you so much for that. Profitability, I'm sure, is, the goal of every business. So it's important to get these insights. Thank you, Ogaga. And I can see the chats or the Q&A segment is a bit busy. And thank you to those who are already answering some of the questions there. Perhaps we'll get around to others. Toby, I'm coming to you now. And as has been pointed out, customer behavior is constantly changing. How can FMCG firms stay aware of these continuous changing desires of customers? Could you also, give instances of what a company can do specifically, effectively, to modify their product lines to suit these shifting client preferences as they change?
Thanks, Joanna. I'll defer to my marketing colleagues there, but I think maybe a couple of things, and this is my personal opinion. I do feel that changing desire is probably not as pronounced as we think it is, because eventually, if you really reflect on it as a consumer, for whatever it is that you purchase, what you want is what you want. And so more often than not, the first issue is that maybe I can no longer afford it per time. So do I cut on frequency as opposed to making a different choice? So I think also understanding that the way consumers would operate, and it's the way we operate for brands that are or products that are essential to us, you would probably first of all cut on the frequency and then maybe get it in smaller doses. So and that's why you see, for example, MultiChoice is going heavy on Showmax, because they've seen that people have gone from premium to compact plus to the other lower bouquets. And obviously, it's likely that they're seeing consumers are dropping off. And so, now you need to offer something even at the region of 2,000 Naira. And you see them throwing in things like premiership into that. So I think eventually what is still going to happen is, as a business, you just need to understand how to, bring an offering in would I call it smaller doses, for lack of a better description, and ensure that you still meet that desire for the consumer to experience your product, right? So that's what I would say on the shifting or changing desires for consumers. I think in terms of what products could do, what companies could do differently, if I reflect on it, a product which I thought was a brilliant innovation by Ogaga and the team at Cadbury is the Cadbury 3-in-1. Because if you really think about it, if I want to buy a beverage drink from the guys in the bicycles who move across, do I really want to buy the chocolate drink, buy milk, buy sugar separately? And then maybe if the prices of each of those staple items are moving over time, then it just becomes a bit too complex. So beyond solving the problem of making it 3-in-1, you're bringing also convenience to the consumer, because then I just add water, I no longer have to buy sugar and maybe pour a bit of sugar and try and tie it back and keep it somewhere. I just poured this particular drink and I add water. So you're solving a convenience problem. You're solving also an affordability problem. And at times you hit that sweet spot and, it becomes, a brilliant innovation. And this is not just for Nigeria. If I take it outside Nigeria, it's the same thing. Dove soap, for example, launched a 3-in-1 bar soap, in the developed markets. And it's for men. And it can, it's for face, it's for body, and it's for shaving. And all of a sudden, with that 1 bar of soap, for a man who uses that, then you don't need to buy shaving cream again. You don't need to think about, oh, maybe I need to moisturize my face or whatever with something else. You just use the same bar soap for everything. So I think obviously that's where it's headed towards, which is really around driving the convenience, making it still as much as possible affordable, and more importantly, the product efficacy is still intact. If you're able to sort of navigate across these touch points, then those are instances where you can, begin to drive some interesting product lines innovations.
Thank you so much for that. And of course, innovation. I mean, that's key at a time like this for FMCGs trying to adapt to all these changes. Let's move on swiftly to the final session and then we'll get around to your questions. I can see a ton of interesting questions. I look forward to hearing, the perspective of our panelists today. The final session, pioneering innovations and crafting irresistible product offerings. I mean, our speakers have, gone ahead of us already. But let's follow the process nevertheless. Ogaga, right? Due to the rising cost, inflation, we've seen companies innovate. Toby has, just highlighted some of them. The sachet products, the 3-in-1s, to meet consumers' affordability. What other ways can manufacturing companies innovate their product offerings, stay essential to their consumers as well?
Okay, I think yeah, Toby talked about, and thanks for mentioning that our lovely product. I think it's the 3-in-1 helps. It's consumer it helps. So I think one of the things we do, and I think the marketing guys are doing a fantastic job on this, is understanding, like I said, consumer behavior, and looking at how you need to react. For instance, if you look at your candies, as in if your carton size, it is very expensive, because the point is that your consumer or your trade spending power is extremely very important. So if a carton of Tom Tom is used to be 15,000 naira a carton, I'm just giving you a price, an example, and now because of all the cost of things going up, the price has gone up to about 30,000 naira. So what do you need to do to ensure that the trader, because the trader now needs to bring additional 15K to continue in that business. So what do you need to do? You probably now need to look for, how do I reduce the size of the carton so that the cash outlay of the trade will probably be less than the 30K that they pay. They'll probably pay. If I have like maybe 40 candies, 40 sachets of candies in a carton. What if I reduce to 25? The cash outlay for the customer will be much less, so the customer can continue to do business. So maybe the price has now increased from 15 to like 18 or 19. So the cash outlay for the trader will be additional 3,000 naira to continue doing the business. Then the frequency of buy will determine of how much he goes back to buy more carton. So those are consideration we also play. Those from the consumer side. If I have 40 candies or 40 single candies in the sachets, and the cost has also gone up significantly, how do I reduce it to about 25 or 30 or thereabouts, so as this cost, the spending power of the consumer would also not be too felt, because it helps because you can't go to a supermarket and say, well, can you open the candy and let's share. So I do that for the consumer, I do that for the trade, so that we don't have a significant impact when it comes to cash outlay, because the cash outlay is extremely very important, because we know that the funds have not significantly increased. So how do we, in this rising environment we find ourselves, how do we put the consumer and the trader or the trade in our planning to ensure that our products are still affordable to them. So I think those are some of the things that we look at to ensure that they are still able to come buy our products. And also, you also look at, there are some SKUs that you probably produce, and the SKUs are not moving as fast as it's moving. What do I need to do? Do I need to delist, or do I need to add? Because all this has supply chain consideration. So if a particular SKU is, the offtake is extremely very slow, and it's also impacting the team in supply chain, to actually, the number of write-offs that they have is much. Or, so what do I need to do? How do I simplify my process to ensure that I'm still able to remain profitable, and at the same time our consumers are still able to afford our product? But the point is that whatever cost you cannot absorb, someone has to pay for it. And how do you need to manage that cost input to ensure that if I simplify the process, the supply chain cost might reduce, and that will translate to what we sell. So these are things that we do on a regular basis to ensure that our trade and our consumers are still able to afford our products, to at least to a great extent.
I mean, there's going to be a lot of, keeping up, because things are changing quite quickly. Consumer behaviors are also changing quite quickly. And innovations would have to be just as quick. So final question, Toby, what do you see as some of the future trends in product innovations? How can companies remain, on their marks, right, to, adapt to these, to quickly innovate, right, so adapt to these fast occurring changes?
All right, thanks, Joanna. So I think maybe I'll start from where Ogaga ended, which is that for every company, you just need to realize there is a tough choice to be made. As if inflation and costs go up, you have to pass the cost somewhere. And it is either it is going to the consumers, or it is going to the shareholders, or you are able to improve your efficiency to absorb the costs. It's one of the three options. And the moment you frame it from that perspective, then you begin to understand what is at stake per time. And the fact that whatever it is that you do, how you operate, because for me, how you remain flexible to innovate, it's not just innovating products, it's also innovating your operations, innovating your thinking and your mindset in terms of how to operate in this industry. And so I think first is what I mentioned earlier. You just need to embrace that volatility and get into a space where you're not fazed by what is going on. And it's easier said than done, I agree. But trust me, at the end of the day, if you are planning your operations today and dollar gets to say 1,800 and you are surprised, then the question would be why? Why are you surprised? Because you should be doing scenario planning and the rest of it. So in terms of our approach, we need to also begin to change that, and I think what that does is it helps you remain very steady even in uncertain times. Because if you continue to treat volatility, like it's an event and it's something that's happened, then you will only provide event-driven solutions, which usually would only be incremental. It would never be a seismic sort of shift. So that's the first thing I would say. The other innovation I would also call out is innovation in terms of your workforce, in terms of people who work in your team. I think in Nigeria, we need to embrace diversity a lot more, in terms of the team, whether it's in recruiting or also in developing, our teams. And diversity I'm speaking about is not really gender, but, diversity in age, in ethnicity, in social strata, diversity in terms of not just book smart, also street smart, because at the end of the day, how do you serve a consumer base if your organization does not represent what you're trying to serve? If you are not careful, you will just end up in a constant bubble of groupthink. And therefore, whatever solutions you are churning out are not really a reflection on what the Nigerian consumer is looking for, right? So that's another area where I think, between the team leads and HR, there needs to be also a change in approach. I think overall, you just need to innovate for affordability. And the way I would sort of try to summarize it is that you need to have a product that delivers. You need to have it at the right point of purchase, fully available. You need to have it, available at the price point and the pack format that is accessible to the different cadre of consumers that you have. And more importantly, in doing all of this, it has to make sense for you financially. It has to be profitable. As basic as it sounds, this is what every FMCG company in Nigeria today is trying to juggle in terms of the different balls being juggled. But overall, if you are able to sort of get into that zone where you are managing that, you have the product, you have it available across the country, the price point is right, the pack format is available, it's profitable for you, then you're sort of geared up to succeed in the FMCG industry. Of course, I keep repeating it, Forex neutrality is the foundation to all of this. You see Julius Berger going into cashew processing. I don't think it is because they love cashew. It is basically the times we are in. So there would also be a lot of that where you need to really be flexible and radical in your thinking and approach in terms of how do I maybe try to generate, exports and exports, dollars from exports and the rest of it. So that for me is the angle through which I would say companies can remain flexible in innovating. Of course, there would be the things around the formulation, trying to make the product, maybe deliver more with lesser ingredients. That is always a standard anyways in the industry. So I expect companies to continue to do that.
All right, thank you so much for that, Toby. And we're going to slide straight into the Q&A section. In case you're just joining us, you missed a lot, but this session will be available on YouTube for you to run through, pick up on more things, and plan. So yes, Industry Economic Outlook, hosted by Nairametrics. We focused on the FMCG sector challenges and opportunities. I'm just going through the chat box. Let me see if I can squeeze in one or two questions, right? And I'm staying with you, Toby. New entrants, is there any incentive for them? And specifically in such volatile times like this, what single advice would experts give to a person planning to enter the FMCG retail sector as a new entrant?
I don't advise is, first of all, enter with your eyes open. I think it's a very volatile area today. And if we're talking retail sector, it's even more volatile because in principle, if I understand this question, you're talking about perhaps being a distributor or someone who's selling, if that is the case. But then again, the volatility in pricing and all of that is key. I think for me, the important thing again is to invest in data, understand the trends. FMCG is huge, but then you need to decide what you want to do. There's the whole explanation or the saying around, do you want to sell a product worth 10 naira to 100 million people, or do you want to sell a product worth 1,000 naira to 100,000 people? You need to sort of decide what works for you in terms of scale, in terms of how far you really want to stretch yourself. So I think it's really to be very clear and focused on what you want to do. My advice is to go for simplicity. Don't try to do too much at the same time. Go for simplicity, and then you understand it. You understand the area you've gone into, then you are able to. It's a very, very difficult terrain today. If that's the only caveat I would give. So you don't come back saying Toby advised you to go in and.
All right, thank you for that, Toby. Let's come to Ogaga now. There's this other question. FMCG companies are not having it good in today's Nigeria, obviously, but there are ways around it, as today's webinar has shown. What are your predictions for 2024 outlook with respect to survival and profitability for FMCGs? Should we expect more exits as we journey through 2024? Interesting question. Ogaga.
So, I think someone reached out to me yesterday as well to get my views on You see, if you don't play Nigeria, you're missing out. Nigeria has 222 million people. Nigeria has a very young, agile population. So if you want to play in Africa, Nigeria is a place for you to play in. And we all know that tough times probably does not last. Only those who are agile enough that will be able to survive and manage tough times. So I don't think I can't predict because every company has their own plans. You see, some companies investing in Nigeria while some are leaving. I think we talked about some companies converting their loans to equity. It says that they know that these things exist, and we've also seen countries also going under recession. UK recession was talked about last, I think, 2 days back. Japan, that used to be a huge when it comes to world, now they are number 3 because they're also going through recession. So these things happen. But the point is that exiting probably does not solve the problem because if you look at the population of Africa and look at Nigeria, and we are not playing Nigeria, you are really, really missing out. So in terms of predicting who will leave next, of course, I can't say. But I think what Toby also mentioned is about being agile. Know what your consumer wants and know how to react faster than you think. So predicting what the FX rate it would be tomorrow, because if you had asked me in December what the FX rate would be this year, I'll probably be saying that maybe 1,001 is where it will stay, but now it's 1,006, so 1,005. So predicting the FX rate is something that is extremely very difficult because we know there are a lot of things that the government is doing to see how they can actually keep that, and it would probably yield results in time to come. But the point is, now that we find ourselves, what do we need to do? We need to be agile enough and be flexible to make a change so that we can remain in the business. The point is that consumers understand that the cost of things is going up. And a good example is bread. It's going up every day. It's now by 1,600. And this was something that was being sold for 700 just a year ago. So you can see that, but people are still buying because they understand that the cost of things are going up. So consumers would understand, but are they able to stay to manage the cost of things that you are selling? But the point is that when probably things change, if you're no longer there, you've lost those consumers for real. But if circumstances changes, they'll probably come back to you. So I think the point is remaining agile as an FMCG company or industry is extremely very important so that you could make those necessary changes on time because the cost of things, the way it changes very fast. So your response to those things needs to be extremely very fast. And once you do that, it will help.
Mhm. All right, thank you so much for that, Ogaga. There are so many questions here, a good number of questions here. I'm going to, our panelists, if you can just head over there and type in an answer because of our time. There's an interesting question as well. I mean, there's been a lot of talk around price regulation, fixing prices for certain goods like milk, flour, sugar, FMCG. Ogaga, that's for you.
Sorry, the network was breaking. I didn't get the question. I just heard price regulation. So can you just come again, please?
All right. Yeah, there has been some talk around price regulation, fixing prices of certain commodities like milk, flour, sugar. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
So, see, every FMCG, I think we all have what they call recommended selling price, and our recommended selling price is actually coming from the cost of produce. And if you look at the industry, as in recommended selling price, depending on your ingredients, differs. So, fixing price for you could have price. I don't know about for finished goods. It's extremely very difficult because every company has their processes and their sourcing and the extent of what they've invested in their fixed costs in terms of machines used for production. So you have a recommended selling price which is available to all your customers on how much they should sell those things, and they're expected to sell within those prices depending on market conditions they find themselves. So having a price fixing for example, you must sell X number of beverage for this amount, it will be very difficult to implement because the cost or your inputs is dependent on where you source your materials from. But in terms of the raw materials, because for instance, if I look at sugar, milk, and some other materials like cocoa, it is regulated in terms of there are limited people that are producing these items. So if you want to go into the raw materials itself, it's something that can be considered. But in terms of the finished goods that FMCG produces, having a fixed selling price or regulated selling price will be something difficult for the regulators to implement, because the cost of those items used to produce it is subjective, depends on investment, it depends on recipe, or depends on what you put in for your production.
Right.
So it's a difficult one to do.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Ogaga. Before I head to you, Ade, to round things up, Toby, your final thoughts in a minute or two.
I think, look, I think I summarized it earlier by saying that it's tough times. So again, I would just want to encourage all those who are in the industry in one way or the other, whether it's as a manufacturer or as a supplier. You know, I think we've been through a lot of tough times in the past. This probably seems like the toughest, but I have a feeling that we've probably not hit the peak yet. So I think it's just for us to continue to remain engaged. Don't let the external volatility begin to impact your well-being. I think that's the first thing. So as much as possible, try to ride the wave. You know, like I said earlier, plan for the worst, hope for the best. And then that way you sort of become a bit more unfazed, and you are able to better plan yourself, plan your operations, and then hopefully improve productivity. So yeah, I think for me, it's just to say that I remain hopeful that with the challenges, it begins to also develop a more resilient supply chain workforce in Nigeria, where we are beginning to develop a lot more skills on how to come about with alternatives and the rest of it. So hopefully, as we also get into all the localization, it expands the economy as well. So that's my own hope and reflection.
All right, thank you so much to both our panelists. We had Toby Adeniyi, who is a Customer Supply Chain Director for Unilever West Africa. And we also had Ogaga Ologe, who is a Finance Director for Cadbury Nigeria PLC. Apologies, we're not able to take all your questions, but thankfully some of our panelists have been, responding or typing out the answers for you, and I'm sure they'll continue to do so. Handing the mic now to Ade, who is the Head Strategy and Public Affairs, Nairametrics, to give the closing remarks. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I am Joanna. Ade, over to you.
Thank you, Joanna. First, let me say thank you to Ogaga and Toby. Ogaga, you still came through despite the fact we pushed this from November to February. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure talking to you and listening to you. Thank you, Toby. First time meeting you. It was really an insightful session. A number of things that were highlighted during the session. If you go to our Twitter feed, and also check the Twitter feeds of our panelists, you would see a number of the things that were said in terms of to keep quality the same is extremely expensive and difficult because input cost changes every day, and a number of other tweets that came out from this session. This is the first of our industry outlook this year. We have another set of sessions next week. We on our calendar, we'll have our masterclass, our macroeconomic masterclass today, masterclass in March on the 7th and 8th of March, a 2-day program. Toby and Ogaga will still be coming back to you so that you can send those your boys to come and learn about the macroeconomic environment so that they can make better decisions for you guys as they go on the streets and try and sell the products and manage the volatility of prices in Nigeria. We'll be having our next industry outlook on the 9th of March. Remember our regular programming on our platforms. Follow the Money every Monday on Classic 97.3 at 8 a.m. with Ugodre and myself. Our Twitter spaces on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6 p.m. And don't forget to download the Nairametrics app on on Apple and Android or Google Play Store. It's been a pleasure listening to my panelists, and thank you, Joanna, as usual, for a wonderful presentation and for a wonderful hosting and anchoring of the program. To all my people at the back end, thank you for making this a seamless session. The technical hitches were not there, maybe just a few there, here and there. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you once again on behalf of Nairametrics. My name is Wade Ahimi. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you, Ogaga. Thank you, Toby. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks. Thank you.
Bye.